They had been told that freedom could be a trick. Virginia, late summer 1945. The truck rolled to a slow, uneven stop on a stretch of pale dirt that seemed to go on longer than it should, longer than any prison entrance had a right to be. Dust lifted into the air, thin and weightless, drifting past the wooden slats like something unsure of where to settle. Inside the truck, Anna Weiss sat with her hands folded in her lap, her posture straight despite the miles, despite the heat pressing into her bones. She did not look up immediately. She counted first. 1 breath. 2. 3. The engine cut. Silence followed, thick but not threatening. That was the first thing that felt wrong. No shouting. No orders barked through clenched teeth. No boots rushing toward them. Just the sound of wind moving through open space. Anna lifted her eyes. Through the narrow gap in the wood, she searched for it. The fence. The wire. The shape of captivity she understood. There was none. The truck door opened with a metallic creak that seemed too loud for how quiet everything else was. Light spilled in, soft and wide, not harsh, not blinding. One of the women beside her inhaled sharply, as if she had seen something she could not name. "Stay ready," someone whispered in German, though no one knew what they were supposed to be ready for. Anna stepped down when it was her turn, boots meeting the ground with a muted thud. She did not move forward. Not yet. She stood still and let her eyes adjust, scanning, measuring, assembling the world in front of her piece by piece. Wooden barracks. Clean lines. Windows open to the air. A gravel path leading somewhere without force. No barbed wire cutting the horizon. No guard towers rising like warnings. No rifles raised in silent command. Just space. Too much space. The other women gathered behind her, forming a line without being told, their bodies instinctively aligning to rules that were not being enforced. No one spoke. A breeze moved across the field, lifting strands of hair, brushing against sleeves like a quiet question. Anna's gaze shifted to the edges of the camp, searching again, slower this time, more deliberate. Nothing. No boundary. No visible limit. Her chest tightened, not from fear exactly, but from something unfamiliar. Uncertainty without direction. A soldier stood several yards away, hands resting loosely at his sides. He was not watching them closely. In fact, he looked as though he had already seen them and decided there was nothing more to confirm. He turned slightly, glancing toward one of the buildings as if expecting someone else to arrive. No urgency. No tension. Anna took a single step forward, then stopped again. The ground beneath her felt solid, real, unchanged by the absence of control she had anticipated. Behind her, one of the younger women whispered, "Where are the fences?" No one answered. Because the question itself carried more weight than any answer could. Anna kept her eyes forward. Searching. Waiting for the illusion to break. Waiting for the hidden line to reveal itself. But it did not. And for the first time since the war had taken everything from her, Anna realized she did not know how to stand in a place that did not force her to. No one told them to move, and that was the second thing that felt wrong. Time stretched in a way Anna had not experienced in years, not measured by commands or footsteps, but by hesitation. A full minute passed, maybe more. The women remained where they were, standing in the open as if waiting for an invisible signal that never came. The soldier near the barracks shifted his weight, not impatient, just aware, like a man waiting for guests who had not yet decided to enter his home. Anna watched him carefully. His posture carried no tension. His hands were empty. No weapon raised, no authority asserted. It unsettled her more than anger would have. Behind her, a soft voice broke the stillness. "Maybe it is further in," one of the women said quietly, as if the fences might be hidden just beyond sight. Another shook her head. "You do not hide fences," she replied. Anna did not turn. Her eyes traced the line where the ground met the distant trees, searching for any interruption, any sign of structure meant to contain. There was nothing. Only open land stretching beyond what she could measure. A door somewhere to her left opened with a gentle sound. Anna's attention shifted. A man stepped out, older than the others, his uniform pressed but worn at the edges in a way that suggested use, not display. He paused on the wooden steps, looking at them not as a problem to solve, but as something to understand. He did not approach immediately. He gave them space, as if that distance itself mattered. Anna noticed the detail without fully knowing why. The man walked forward slowly, each step deliberate, stopping several feet away. Close enough to speak. Far enough to avoid pressure. When he finally spoke, his voice was even, carrying across the quiet without force. "You are safe here," he said. The words landed without impact at first, as if they required translation beyond language. Safe was not a condition they had been trained to accept. Anna felt something shift behind her ribs, not belief, not yet, but the recognition that the sentence had not been followed by a demand. The man's eyes moved across the group, not inspecting, not counting, just seeing. When his gaze reached Anna, it paused for a fraction of a second longer. Not because she stood at the front, but because she had not looked away. That, too, felt unfamiliar. A younger woman beside Anna finally stepped forward half a pace, her voice unsteady but clear enough. "Where are the fences?" she asked in careful English. The question seemed to echo in the open air, larger than the words themselves. The man did not answer immediately. He considered it, not as a challenge, but as something worth answering correctly. He glanced briefly toward the empty horizon, then back to them. "There are none," he said. Simple. Direct. No explanation attached. A few of the women exchanged glances, confusion sharpening into something closer to unease. One of them let out a short, uncertain breath, almost a laugh, but it carried no humor. Anna remained still, her mind working through the absence like it was a problem that could be solved if she observed long enough. The man continued, his tone unchanged. "You will have work assignments. Meals are served 3 times a day. Water is available at all times. If you need medical attention, you ask." Each sentence stood on its own, practical, measured. No threats. No conditions layered beneath. It sounded less like an order and more like information. Anna felt the structure of it, the quiet steadiness, and for a moment she wondered if this was the control. Not walls. Not barriers. But something less visible. The man took a small step back, creating more space rather than less. "You can go inside," he said, gesturing lightly toward the barracks. He did not wait for compliance. He turned slightly, as if the choice no longer belonged to him. The women did not move. Not immediately. Because for the first time, the absence of force required something they had not practiced. Decision. Anna looked at the open doorway ahead, then back at the empty land behind her. There was no line telling her where one ended and the other began. And that was the moment she understood that whatever held them here was not something she could see. Anna moved first, though no one saw the exact moment she decided to do it. It did not look like a decision from the outside. It looked like a shift in balance, a subtle adjustment of weight from one foot to the other, and then another step forward that carried her across an invisible line she had been searching for but never found. The gravel beneath her boots made a soft sound, steady and real, grounding her in a way the open space could not. Behind her, the others hesitated, watching, measuring her movement as if it might reveal the rules they could not see. Anna did not look back. She kept her eyes on the doorway ahead, the frame simple, unguarded, the wood worn in places where hands had touched it before. That detail stayed with her. People had passed through here. Not forced. Not driven. Simply moving. She reached the steps and paused again, not because she was afraid, but because something inside her was adjusting, recalibrating to a world that did not respond the way it was supposed to. She placed her hand lightly on the railing. It was warm from the sun. Solid. Ordinary. She had expected something colder. Inside, the air felt different. Cooler by a few degrees, shaded, carrying the faint scent of soap and wood. Rows of bunks lined the walls, evenly spaced, blankets folded with a precision that suggested routine but not rigidity. A window stood open at the far end, letting in a breeze that moved the curtain just enough to catch the eye. Anna stepped fully into the room. No one stopped her. No voice followed. No door closed behind her. That, more than anything, made her pause. She turned slightly, glancing back toward the entrance. It remained open. The outside still visible. The distance between inside and outside measured in steps, not barriers. One of the younger women entered next, her movements quicker, almost urgent, as if staying outside carried more uncertainty than stepping in. Others followed, one by one, their footsteps quiet, their eyes scanning everything with careful attention. No one spoke at first. The silence inside the barracks was different from the silence outside. It was contained, but not enforced. Anna walked slowly along the row of bunks, her fingers brushing the edge of a wooden frame. Smooth. Maintained. Not neglected. She stopped beside one and looked down at the folded blanket. It was clean. Not new, but cared for. She lifted the corner slightly, then let it fall back into place. The gesture was small, almost instinctive, but it told her more than any explanation could. These things were meant to be used. Not rationed. Not fought over. A sound behind her drew her attention. One of the women had stepped back toward the doorway, looking out again as if to confirm the absence had not changed. They could leave, she said quietly, not to anyone in particular. The statement hung in the air, incomplete, unfinished. Anna turned her head just enough to acknowledge it. Could they? The question did not feel simple. It expanded outward, touching something deeper than physical movement. Outside, the same soldier stood where he had been, now speaking to another man, their voices low, their posture relaxed. They did not look toward the barracks. They did not watch the door. Anna followed the line of sight past them, out to the open land again, stretching beyond the reach of the camp, beyond the reach of anything she could define. She imagined walking. 10 yards. 50. 100. No one stopping her. No one calling her back. The thought did not bring relief. It brought something else. Weight. Responsibility. A kind of exposure she had not prepared for. Behind her, a woman sat down on one of the bunks, the mattress dipping slightly under her weight. The sound was soft, almost tentative, as if even sitting required permission that had not been given. Anna turned back toward the room. The others were settling in slowly, their movements cautious but deliberate, each action testing the boundaries that were not visible. She remained standing for a moment longer, her eyes moving once more to the open doorway, then to the window, then back to the space around her. There were no fences. She knew that now. But she also understood something else, something quieter, harder to define. The absence of walls did not mean the absence of limits. It meant the limits had moved somewhere she could not yet see. Morning came without a signal. No whistle. No shouted command. Just light. It moved slowly through the open window, stretching across the wooden floor in long, pale lines that shifted as the sun climbed higher. Anna opened her eyes to that light, not to noise, not to urgency. For a moment, she did not move. She listened. The room held a quiet that was not empty, but settled, as if everything inside it had agreed to remain still. Around her, the other women were waking in similar silence, their movements careful, almost restrained, as though they were still unsure what kind of sound was allowed here. One of them sat up slowly, the frame of the bunk giving a soft creak that seemed louder than it should have been. Another swung her feet to the floor and paused, looking toward the doorway before standing fully, as if expecting someone to appear and correct her. No one did. Anna pushed herself upright and rested her hands on her knees, feeling the steady weight of her own body, the quiet rhythm of breath that no longer had to match anyone else's. She looked toward the open door. It had not been closed overnight. The outside was still there, unchanged, waiting without pressure. That detail settled into her mind more deeply than anything from the day before. Nothing had shifted. Nothing had been taken away. A faint sound drifted in from beyond the barracks. Metal against metal. Then voices, low, unhurried. Not commands. Conversation. Anna stood and walked toward the doorway, her steps measured, her eyes adjusting again to the brightness outside. The air was cooler than the day before, carrying a trace of morning moisture that softened the edges of everything. A few soldiers moved between the buildings, their pace steady, their attention focused on tasks that did not involve the women. One carried a wooden crate, another checked something on a clipboard, their actions precise but not tense. No one looked toward the barracks with suspicion. No one counted who stepped out. Behind Anna, the others began to follow, drawn by the same quiet curiosity, the same need to confirm that what they had seen yesterday had not been temporary. They stepped into the open space again, slower this time, but with less hesitation. The absence was still there. Still unchanged. One of the women exhaled softly, almost in disbelief. "It is the same," she murmured. Anna did not respond. She was watching something else. Near the center of the camp, a long wooden table had been set up, simple, functional, with metal containers arranged in a line. A soldier stood behind it, placing items with deliberate care, adjusting their position as if alignment mattered. Another approached, carrying what looked like a large kettle, steam rising faintly into the morning air. Food. The realization came quietly, without announcement. No one had called them. No one had instructed them to gather. Yet the arrangement was there, waiting, not hidden, not restricted. Anna felt the shift again, subtle but undeniable. Not control. Not force. Structure without pressure. A path that existed without being enforced. She stepped forward, not quickly, not eagerly, but with a kind of steady acceptance that surprised even her. The others followed at varying distances, some closer, some lingering behind, their eyes moving constantly between the table, the soldiers, and the open land beyond. As Anna approached, the soldier behind the table looked up briefly, meeting her gaze for less than a second before returning to his task. No reaction. No judgment. Just acknowledgement. He gestured lightly toward the containers. "Breakfast," he said. One word. No instruction attached. Anna stopped at the edge of the table and looked down. Bread. Eggs. Something warm, prepared, arranged with care but without display. She did not reach for it immediately. Her hands remained at her sides. The others gathered around, forming a loose line without being told, their spacing uneven, their posture uncertain but not rigid. One of them extended her hand, hesitated, then took a piece of bread, holding it as if it might be taken back. It was not. Anna watched this, the simplicity of it, the absence of condition, and felt something shift deeper this time, not confusion, not resistance, but recognition. Not of the place. Not yet. But of something more difficult to accept. That nothing here required her to be less than what she was. She reached forward and took a plate. The motion was quiet. Final. And for the first time, it did not feel like compliance. It felt like choice. Anna did not eat immediately. She stood with the plate in her hands, feeling its weight, the warmth rising from it in a way that felt unfamiliar after so many months of rationed existence. Around her, the others had begun to eat, slowly at first, their movements cautious, as if the act itself might carry consequences they did not yet understand. One woman took a small bite and stopped, her eyes closing for a brief second, not from pleasure, but from recognition. Real food. Not survival. Something more complete. Anna lowered her gaze to the plate. The eggs were still warm. The bread soft, not dry, not brittle. She broke off a small piece, her fingers steady despite the quiet tension that remained beneath her skin. She brought it to her mouth and paused just before tasting it, a moment suspended between instinct and doubt. Then she ate. The taste did not overwhelm her. It settled. Simple. Honest. Something in her chest shifted, not dramatically, not all at once, but enough to be noticed. Around the table, the women began to move more naturally, their shoulders lowering, their posture changing in ways they did not seem aware of. No one rushed them. No one counted portions. When one of the containers ran low, the soldier behind the table simply replaced it, his movements efficient, almost routine. Anna watched him briefly. He did not look at their hands. He did not monitor what they took. He only ensured that what was there remained available. That detail stayed with her. After a few minutes, the man she had seen the day before approached again. Captain Harper. His steps were the same as before, measured, unhurried, as if time in this place moved differently for him. He stopped a short distance from the table, not interrupting, not announcing himself. He waited until someone noticed. It was Anna. Their eyes met again, and this time she did not look away. "You will be assigned to work details today," he said, his voice carrying just enough to reach the group without forcing attention. "Light duties. Nothing beyond your capability." The words were clear. No edge. No implied warning. Just structure. Anna listened carefully, not just to what he said, but to how he said it. There was no attempt to establish control through tone. Only clarity. One of the women, older than the rest, stepped forward slightly. "And if we do not?" she asked, her voice steady but guarded. The question lingered in the air, heavier than its volume suggested. Harper considered it, not as defiance, but as a question that deserved an answer. "You are expected to contribute," he said. "But you are not forced." A pause followed. Not long. Just enough to let the meaning settle. This place works because people choose to follow the structure. Not because they are made to. Anna felt the weight of that sentence more than any order she had ever heard. Choice. The word did not sit easily. It carried responsibility, expectation, something internal rather than imposed. She looked down at her plate again, then back at him. "And if someone leaves?" she asked, her English precise, each word deliberate. Harper did not respond immediately. His gaze shifted briefly toward the open land beyond the camp, then returned to her. "Then they leave," he said. No emphasis. No elaboration. The simplicity of it was more unsettling than any restriction. Anna held his gaze for a moment longer, searching for something beneath the words. There was nothing hidden there. No condition waiting to be revealed. Just the truth, presented without defense. She nodded once, a small movement, almost imperceptible, but enough to mark the moment. Around her, the others had gone quiet again, not from fear, but from the slow realization that the rules they expected did not exist here in the way they understood them. Anna took another bite of food, her movements now more certain, more grounded. The space around her had not changed. There were still no fences. No barriers. But something inside her had begun to take shape, something that felt like a boundary, not imposed, not visible, but real in a way that was harder to define. And for the first time, she understood that the absence of control did not mean the absence of order. It meant the order had been placed somewhere else. Somewhere within reach. The work assignments were given without ceremony. No formation. No roll call shouted into the air. Just a list, read aloud once, clear and steady, as if the expectation was not obedience, but understanding. Anna stood with the others, listening, her attention sharp, not out of fear, but because the structure here required something different from her. Participation. Her name came in the middle. Anna Weiss. Medical detail. The word settled quietly. She did not react outwardly, but something inside her aligned with it. Familiar ground. Not a role forced onto her, but one that matched what she had been before everything had collapsed. A soldier stepped forward and gestured lightly. This way. No urgency. No pressure. Anna followed, along with two others, their steps falling into rhythm without being commanded to do so. They walked across the open camp, past the same space that had unsettled them the day before. It still felt wide. Still undefined. But now it held paths. Not marked, not enforced, but visible through use. Footprints in dirt. Slight wear in the grass. Evidence that people moved here with intention. The building they approached was smaller than the barracks, painted white, its windows open to the air. Inside, the light was softer, filtered through thin curtains that moved gently with the breeze. A table stood in the center, covered with neatly arranged supplies. Bandages. Bottles. Cloths folded with precision. Anna paused at the threshold, taking it in, not with surprise, but with careful observation. Everything had its place. Not for display. For use. A man inside looked up as they entered. He was older, his sleeves rolled to his elbows, his hands steady as he finished tying a bandage around another soldier's wrist. He nodded once in acknowledgement, then returned his attention to the task. No introduction. No explanation. The work spoke for itself. Anna stepped closer, her eyes following his movements. Efficient. Controlled. Familiar. When he finished, he turned to her. "You have training?" he asked. His voice was direct, but not demanding. Anna nodded. "Nurse," she said simply. He studied her for a brief second, not doubting, not questioning, just confirming. Then he gestured toward the table. "Then you already know what to do." No further instruction. The assumption of capability landed differently than any order she had ever received. It did not reduce her. It required her. Anna moved to the table and picked up a piece of cloth, folding it once more along an edge that did not need correcting. Her hands remembered the motion before her mind fully caught up. Around her, the room settled into a quiet rhythm. Small tasks. Measured movements. No one watched over her shoulder. No one corrected her pace. The absence of supervision did not feel like neglect. It felt like trust. That realization moved slowly through her, not fully accepted, but impossible to ignore. A soldier entered, holding his arm carefully, not in distress, just aware of discomfort. Anna turned toward him without hesitation. She gestured to the chair. He sat. No words exchanged at first. She cleaned the area, her movements precise, her focus narrowing to the task in front of her. The world outside the room faded. The open land. The missing fences. The questions. All of it pulled back as something older, something steadier took its place. Purpose. When she finished, the soldier nodded slightly. "Thank you," he said. 2 words. Simple. Unforced. Anna paused for a fraction of a second. The phrase was not new. But here, in this place, without hierarchy pressing down on it, it carried a different weight. She inclined her head once in response, not out of habit, but acknowledgement. The man at the table watched her briefly, then returned to his own work. No praise. No correction. Just continuation. Time moved differently in that room. Measured by action, not command. By need, not control. And as Anna worked, she began to understand something that had been forming since the moment she stepped off the truck. This place did not remove structure. It relocated it. Away from walls. Away from force. And placed it somewhere far more difficult to resist. Somewhere that required her to stand on her own, not because she was told to, but because nothing here would do it for her. The rhythm of the room carried through the afternoon without interruption, steady and deliberate, until Anna began to notice something that did not belong to the pattern. It was not a sound at first. It was absence. One of the other women assigned to the medical detail, a quiet figure named Elise, was no longer in the room. Anna realized it only because she had grown used to the small consistency of her presence, the way she folded cloth with careful precision near the far end of the table. Now that space stood empty. Anna did not speak immediately. She finished tying a bandage, set the materials back in place, and allowed her eyes to move once across the room again. Still empty. The older medic noticed it too, though his expression did not change. He continued working, his hands moving with the same calm efficiency as before. She stepped out, he said after a moment, not looking up. His tone carried no concern, only acknowledgement. Anna paused, the words settling in. Stepped out. Not taken. Not removed. Simply left. The phrase felt heavier than it should have. She turned slightly toward the open doorway, her gaze moving past the frame and into the open space beyond. The light had shifted since morning, longer shadows now stretching across the ground, marking time. Without announcing it. There was no sign of Elise. No urgency. No search being organized. The absence remained unchallenged. Anna felt something tighten in her chest, not fear, but a kind of unease that came from the lack of response. In every system she had known, absence triggered action. Here, it seemed to trigger nothing. She stepped toward the doorway, stopping just at the threshold. The air outside carried warmth now, mixed with the faint scent of earth and wood. A few soldiers moved in the distance, their pace unchanged, their focus directed elsewhere. No one was looking for anyone. Anna took one step outside, then another, her eyes scanning the open land with a sharper focus than before. The space that had once felt empty now felt exposed. Not because of what was there, but because of what was not. No barriers. No checkpoints. Nothing to stop movement in any direction. She walked a few yards further, her boots pressing lightly into the dirt, leaving marks that would remain for a time and then disappear. She stopped and turned slowly, looking back toward the buildings. The camp stood quiet, contained not by walls, but by something less visible. She could still see the doorway of the medical building. Still see the table inside through the open frame. Nothing had changed. And yet everything had. A voice behind her broke the stillness. You are looking for someone. Anna turned. Captain Harper stood several feet away, his posture the same as before, composed, unhurried, as if he had simply arrived when the moment required it. Anna held his gaze. She left, she said. Not a question. A statement. Harper nodded once. Yes. No explanation followed. Anna studied his expression, searching for concern, for reaction, for any sign that this mattered in the way she expected it to. There was none. Only calm. You are not going to stop her, Anna said. The words came out more directly than she intended. Harper's eyes shifted briefly toward the horizon, then back to her. No, he said. The simplicity of the answer pressed against her understanding. Anna felt the tension rise again, sharper this time. Then what keeps anyone here, she asked. The question was no longer abstract. It carried weight now, shaped by the absence she could not ignore. Harper did not respond immediately. He took a slow breath, not out of hesitation, but as if choosing the exact words mattered. The same thing that brings them back, he said. Anna did not look away. The sentence lingered between them, incomplete, waiting. "And what is that?" she asked quietly. Harper met her gaze without shifting. "The moment they realized they were never meant to be kept," he said. The words did not resolve her unease. They deepened it. Anna turned her head slightly, looking once more at the open land stretching beyond the camp, then back at the buildings behind her. Somewhere out there, Elise had chosen a direction. No one had stopped her. No one had followed. And yet, standing here, Anna felt something she could not name, something that held her in place more firmly than any wall ever had. Not force. Not fear. Something else. Something that did not need to be seen to exist. The sun had begun its slow descent when Anna returned to the medical building, but the space no longer felt the same. Nothing had changed in its structure. The table remained in place. The supplies were still aligned with quiet precision. The older medic continued his work without interruption. And yet, the absence of one person had altered the weight of the room in a way that could not be measured. Anna stepped inside and paused for a brief moment, her eyes moving instinctively to the place where Elise had stood. It remained empty. Not marked. Not acknowledged. Just space, reclaimed by silence. She moved back to her position at the table and picked up a folded cloth, her hands resuming their motion with practiced ease, but her thoughts no longer anchored in the same place. The rhythm continued. A soldier entered, then another. Small tasks. Steady exchanges. Words kept to what was necessary. But beneath it all, a quiet awareness had settled over her, something that would not fade. The idea of leaving had taken shape, no longer abstract, no longer distant. It had a direction now. A path. A real possibility measured not in imagination, but in steps across open ground. Anna finished tying a bandage. And set the materials aside, her fingers lingering for a fraction of a second longer than needed. She turned slightly and looked toward the doorway again. The light outside had softened, turning the edges of everything warmer, less defined. Evening approached without announcement. No bell. No signal. Just a gradual shift in color and shadow. She stepped outside once more, this time without hesitation. The air carried a different weight now, cooler, quieter, as if the day itself was preparing to withdraw. The camp moved at the same steady pace. A few figures crossed the open space, their movements unhurried, their direction purposeful but not forced. No one watched her as she walked. No one followed. Anna moved further than before, her steps deliberate, her gaze fixed ahead. 10 yards. 20. 50. The distance grew behind her without resistance. The buildings began to recede, their outlines softening against the horizon. She stopped. Not because something had stopped her, but because something inside her had shifted. She turned her head slightly, looking back. The camp stood exactly as it had before. Open. Unchanged. No line marking where she had crossed from one state to another. No signal telling her she had gone too far. The silence pressed in, not heavy, but expansive, leaving space for something else to rise. Memory. The routines she had known before. The systems that defined her place in the world. Commands given. Orders followed. Identity shaped by structure imposed from the outside. She looked forward again, toward the open land stretching beyond anything she could see. Freedom, if that was what this was, did not feel like release. It felt like exposure. Like standing without support, without direction, without the certainty of where to place the next step. Anna remained still for a long moment, the breeze moving lightly against her sleeves, the ground firm beneath her boots. No one called her back. No one questioned her absence. The choice remained entirely her own. Slowly, she exhaled, a breath she had not realized she was holding. Then she turned. Not quickly. Not with urgency. Just a measured movement, deliberate and clear. She began to walk back. The distance closed with each step, the outlines of the buildings sharpening again, the quiet structure of the camp returning into focus. When she reached the edge of the space, nothing acknowledged her return. No record was made. No question asked. She stepped back into the rhythm as if she had never left. But something had changed. Not in the place. In her. She understood now what the absence of fences required. Not obedience. Not fear. But something far more difficult to sustain. The decision to remain. And as the last light of the day settled over the open ground, Anna realized that the boundary she had been searching for since the moment she arrived had never existed in the world around her. It had been forming, slowly and quietly, within her all along. Days passed without being counted. Not by calendars, not by commands, but by patterns that formed quietly and held their shape without force. Morning light through the window. The steady walk to the medical building. The table, always arranged, always ready. Anna moved through it all with a calm that did not come from certainty, but from acceptance. She no longer searched for fences. She no longer expected them to appear. The absence had become part of the structure itself. Elise did not return the next day. Nor the day after. No announcement was made. No explanation offered. The space she had occupied remained open, as if it belonged to no one and yet still held a trace of her presence. Anna noticed it each time she entered the room, but the feeling it stirred had changed. It was no longer unease. It was understanding. The possibility of leaving had not disappeared. It had simply settled into the background, like the horizon beyond the camp. Always there. Never pressing. One afternoon, as the light shifted across the floor in long, quiet lines, Anna stepped outside during a brief pause in her work. The air carried the faint scent of dry grass, the sound of distant movement blending into something steady and unremarkable. She walked without thinking toward the edge of the open space, her steps following the same path she had taken before, the ground remembering her in subtle impressions that had nearly faded. She stopped at nearly the same distance. The camp behind her. The open land ahead. Nothing had changed. And yet the question no longer felt the same. She did not imagine walking further. She did not measure how far she could go. She simply stood. A soldier passed behind her at a distance, carrying a crate, his pace even, his direction clear. He did not look toward her. He did not need to. Anna lowered her gaze to the ground, then lifted it again slowly, taking in the space not as something to escape, but as something to understand. The choice was still there. It had always been there. But it no longer called to her in the same way. It no longer demanded to be tested. She turned back before the thought could form into action. Not out of hesitation. Not out of doubt. But because the question itself had changed. When she returned to the medical building, the older medic glanced at her briefly, then continued his work. No acknowledgement. No inquiry. Just continuation. Anna moved back to the table and resumed her task, her hands steady, her movements precise. A soldier sat down across from her, extending his arm without speaking. She cleaned the area, wrapped the bandage, and secured it in place. When she finished, he nodded once. "Thank you," he said again, the same two words, unchanged, but now carrying something deeper than before. Anna met his gaze for a brief moment. "You are welcome," she replied. The words felt natural, not rehearsed, not required. The exchange ended there, complete in its simplicity. Outside, the open land stretched as it always had, untouched, unclaimed. Inside, the room held its quiet order, unchanged and steady. There were no fences. There had never been. And yet no one ran. Not because they could not. But because at some point, without a single command being given, the reason to leave had been replaced by something else. Something quieter. Something stronger. Anna set the materials back in place and paused for a moment, her hand resting lightly on the edge of the table. She looked toward the open doorway, then beyond it, to the space that had once unsettled her. It no longer did. Not because it had changed. But because she had. She did not raise her voice. She did not resist. She did not surrender. She simply stood where she chose to stand. And in that choice, the invisible boundary held. Not around her. Within her.